Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting of the Newington Board of Education to order for Wednesday, February 19th. The time is 7:02 p.m. Please rise for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Deb, would you please call the roll? Here.
Brittany Carr. Here.
The entrance.
Here.
Anthony Dillon.
Here.
Timothy Newton.
Here.
Amy Colati.
Here.
Sam Sharp.
Here.
Here. Thank you. The first agenda item is a award for our everyday hero. I will turn it over to Dr. Brumman.
Thank you very much. It is my pleasure to announce this month's Everyday Hero is Jen McGowan. She is a special education teacher at Martin Kellogg School, and she was nominated by Jay LaPierre, paraeducator from Martin Kellogg School, who was also in attendance this evening. Here's what he had to say. Jen has done an amazing job this year creating a learning environment that is inviting and effective for all of our students. We have a visually impaired student this year in grade 7 at NKMS, and she went above and beyond by finding and registering for BESB, which is the Bureau of Educational Services for the Blind, and training workshops to learn about modifying the classroom and classwork for the student with a visual impairment. It was a great opportunity to learn as educators, as well as an opportunity for us to create a classroom that benefits all of our students. Jen is also an amazing person who makes sure that we, the paras, have all the tools and resources we need to accommodate our students. She's an amazing person and comes in every day selfless and with a strong-minded attitude for success. She is absolutely deserving of this nomination. Congratulations, Jen McGowan. And since your nominator's here, he can come up too, Mr. LaPierre. Come on up.
Come on. I only get this because of you.
Do you want to add anything to the, or here?
Pretty well worded, whoever wrote.
Product of the Newington school. Both of
Oh,
us, so,
great.
yeah. So,
Thanks.
Off her camera.
Okay.
thank you.
Do you want to say anything?
I gotta be on the mic. I just, I could have written this for Jay, so I have a very strong feeling about our paras and the work that they do. We could not do the job we do with our students without them. And I'm just blessed and lucky about the paras that we have at Martin Kellogg and in the whole district. They just, here's my plug for higher pay, benefits. What else should I give them? No, they're amazing people and they do a lot of the hard work and some of the same work that we do as teachers. So I couldn't do it without you personally. And just so you know, Jay has also made a commitment to get trained and learn Braille to be able to be what they call a transcriptionist to help this student who has just lost his sight, full sight since 6th grade. He was born sighted and he's an amazing little kid who just, I don't know, Jay and I say every day that I'm not sure I could be as resilient as he is. But Jay's learning Braille alongside the student and it's kind of cool. And I said to him, it's good that you have a young mind and can learn this because I'm not sure I could learn that right now at 50 something. But really, I could not do my job without the paraeducators that work with me. So thank you, Jay.
I'll open up to board comments. Don't fight over it.
Thank you to both of you.
Our paraeducators are extremely valuable in our school system. You make a direct impact to each and every one of the students that you come in contact with. I think the example that you had is the amazing commitment to doing everything you can and beyond that to make sure that every student in our school has not only what they need, but more to have a full life and to have a full future. And I cannot thank you enough with the right words. Thank you.
Ms. Petrus.
Thank you and thank you. Once again, those of us around this table are reminded about the magic that happens in classrooms. And we talk an awful lot, especially now, about the needs of our most special students. And we sometimes forget how important it is to meet our students where they are. And especially when we hear a heartwarming story like your student who's had so much life change in such a short period of time at such a young age. And it's a real credit to both of you, not just on the education side, but on the human side and being there for them. So again, thank you so much for your commitment to all of our students, but especially our students who need the most. So thank you.
Mr. Newton.
It's very important to hear your story of a student with vision impairment and everything else, because the biggest problem we have in the budgets is special education. And I think that people have preconceived notions of what it is or what it isn't. And I think that by just the exposure of seeing that it's in other areas, helps you make a decision either one way or the other, but it at least clarifies what you're doing. Thank you.
Ms. Weaver.
I love Love Fest. We just get to give all the love. One, so good to see you all. This is a nice throwback to my days at MKMS. You look great, by the way. Like, I won't say how long it's been since I've been at MKMS, and she looks the same. But I think one of the things we love about this award is it like highlights that every day, things you're not always hearing, you know, I think things that hit the news waves you're not going to hear. And these are the things that deserve to hear that the community needs to know about what goes on every single day. So thank you both. And it's really, I think, one of the reasons it'll never be enough pay, it'll never be enough things. So this is drop in the bucket, but what you do for our students is truly what makes this community great and what we love to see our students come out with. Like, I can't wait to see in the next 10 years where the student is because of you. And it's why so many of us want to come back because of people like you. So thank you. And I know, you know, we do have a Paraeducator of the Year award now too. So nominations, I don't know when those are open, but just keeping that in mind. But congratulations.
Yes, thank you so much for your commitment to the student and to our schools, obviously. And it was fun to hear that you're both Newington graduates, because it just shows how great that Newington is. And I'm assuming you're more recent graduate, so 21, perfect. So yes, thank you for, I just think it's great that you're learning Braille and you're training yourselves just for the needs of your student. I think that's just really, really awesome to show commitment to everybody, every student, like you said. Thank you so much for being here. We definitely appreciate you, and congratulations. And thank you for nominating Ms. McGowan. Thank you. At this time, I will open up to public participation on any matter related to board responsibilities. In the room, you can come to the end and turn on the mic. Online, you can raise your hand. We saw Mr. Lambert. He's on. Jason, are you there? Well, does he want to say anything?
I
Jason,
am right
did you say
here.
anything?
I am right here. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
One of the things that I wanted to point out when Miss McGowan got up to receive her very well-deserved reward is, what's the first thing that she did? She went ahead and passed the buck to give credit to someone other than herself. And that is absolutely indicative of the type of person that she is. When she works with our paraprofessional staff, she not only helps empower them to best serve our kids, she gets them excited and is quick to point out the wins. whether it's working with all different, student learning profiles. And she spreads that enthusiasm. We're very, very fortunate to have a unbelievable cadre of highly invested paraprofessionals. And I believe that is in due in no small part to the work that Jen does to show the wins and the potential and just the gratifying aspects of the position where you work to serve a kid and you're able to kind of point out and see firsthand the gains and she's intentional to point out those celebrations and that growth. And it's such an honor to work with her every day, as it is to work with a former student, Jay LaPierre, as well. They're doing a great job supporting our students, but I'm so honored to have her represent Martin Kellogg tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Lambert. All right, I don't see any members of the public wanting to speak. Public participation?
I thought you just opened it up.
You're not a member of the public, you're on the board.
I can speak in the public, I'm a taxpayer. You want me to speak just as a board member later? I could do that as well.
I don't know the protocol for that.
I don't know the protocol for that either, so I suppose, let it happen.
Yeah,
See what happens.
go for it.
Have to Review the.
State your name and
Robert's
address for the
rules on that one.
record. I mean, you're welcome to speak later on in the meeting. The public participation is for people who aren't allowed to speak during the meeting, but I mean, we're having a discussion for the next agenda item, so you're welcome to speak now or then, whenever you want. Okay, okay. Okay, so we'll move on to our new business, which is discussion, possible action for a lot on the budget. So first, I think what we'll do is go over the questions that have been asked since, or at last meeting and since, and then we'll open up for discussion on next steps. Or we'll adopt the budget as our own, and then we'll open up for next steps.
Alrighty, so thank you, Board Chair. I did, with the help of my team, and many thanks to my team, many of these items did take quite a bit of research, but what we tried to do is pull together answers to questions. Some have come up since the last board meeting and some are an outgrowth of the board meeting. A quick update to the top item about our athletic fees. This was something that came out after the last meeting. We are a little below the average for the CCC and what we charge for sports. Mr. Myers was able to determine through his outreach that most of our counterparts are charging $147.50 per sport, and we charge $100 per sport. So later on, when we get to that section, I can show the board what a potential raise in our rates for sports could do for the budget. But currently we are a bit below what the average is for our area. Then we had a question from Mr. Newton about an account analysis 24 dash, let's get this up so I can get the numbers right, 2410-690. And basically, there was a request to see the details of that account. I won't read it line by line, but it is linked into there and I will show it. No, I won't, not until I do this. There you go.
Martin Kellogg, right?
This is all areas, Lou, correct me if I'm wrong, we've listed it by every area. Generally, this top section of this memo shows what generally is included in this line item across all schools. And without reading every line item, and laminator, plaques and awards, bulletin board supplies, snacks for students for certain things, student of the month medal, so on and so forth. By schools that had any different unique uses of this line, we listed below. The high school is our hub for all the security tags, or students wear them, so there's a lot of expenses involved in that. There's a special printer that does all those security tags. student ID badges. The Nor'easter Academy does offer a snack for kids because it is in the afternoon after a long school day. High school has a spirit week and advisory activities that are unique to them. Freshman orientation is unique to the high school. The middle school, it's attributed to Martin Kellogg, but both Martin Kellogg and Wallace do the Battle of the Books. And that's a very motivating sixth grade event where kids are competing about books they read. And then elementary schools have special events as well. So that's generally what's in this line. There aren't any real differences this year, probably a lot of cost of living adjustments. Lou, any further comment on this listing that you put together?
Yes, the nature of looking at all the schools and I don't call it inconsistencies, it's more a matter of how they've just evolved over time and the programs that they've been sponsoring for years have kind of taken over, and that becomes the budget foundation. So you see differences school by school as far as what they're doing compared to another school. It's not really structured where it's top-down delivery. You will carry all these items in your budget, and this is all you get. They do have some discretion as far as how they design their programming and their special events. So that's really what's here. I certainly would have to go and, go back line by line, and some pretty small dollars, $200 for this, $120 for that, to really get a really deep assessment. But in just trying to portray the activities in a fashion where you can kind of compare and contrast and see what's really different about it compared to what's common is the approach I took to develop this little summary.
So that's that line in a nutshell.
Ms. Carr, sorry. Just one question. So John Wallace doesn't need funding for Battle of the Books?
It wasn't in their budget, so maybe the PTA is fully sponsoring it this year.
They alternate schools, wonder, so maybe
Okay.
that's what it is.
I believe that's what it is because they run it every year. So they might, and the event t-shirts, I know, Battle of the Books, they have t-shirts for that and for their pep rallies and such. So no, both schools commingle that, I believe, year to year. Okay. The next item that came up is SRO salary detail. What we portrayed last time was accurate, but I know some board members wanted a little more information. I'd rather not show that publicly because it is someone's salary, but feel free as a board member to click that link and read through how all that salary is outlined. A lot of it is determined by the town, while we have an agreement with them that we're paying half. There's a lot of fees in there and a lot of different things, but it is determined by the town, and it's been done that way for a number of years. So I'll leave it to you if you want to pour into those details and find out there's nothing out of the ordinary for that. It's been that way for a number of years. Okay.
Ms. Weaver has a question. Just to clarify, that's just so the public knows, one SRO at the high school.
Yes. We have, people often overlay security guards and SROs. We have one SRO for the entire district, and we have one security guard at every school. But at the high school, we have 3 plus, and one is spread between adult ed and the high school. So that is the number of security detail we have. All right. Oh,
Mr. Newton?
I thought we were paying the bigger percentage. This says 50/50. So is it 50/50? So that position is a total of $100 and something thousand.
go ahead, Lou.
We're paying 50/50 on the base cost for the person, but there are special assignment activities where they may be brought in for other things on days off from school, and there's adjustments to the money that we owe the town because of that. I can't tell you exactly what's in it without spending a bunch of time, unbundling it, but there are extras that go with the over and above the base for them.
All right, Mr. Halloran inquired about this budget line. Let me get to the right tab here there we go. This is budget line item. This is called Public Relations, and it's 2410-542-20. And these are kind of a comparison of what is in the budget for this coming year and what was kind of the trend for this year. I did speak with Ms. Tigno, to ask her why there was some variances, and previously some of these items were paid for out of the student activity account, and that's not the appropriate use of a student activity account, so we budgeted it more appropriately this year when we worked with her on the budget. So that is why there is some deviation, but it's really, it was a little higher. I cut some of the items here, but the deviation from year to year is just a couple of $1,000s. But you can see kind of a breakdown. The high school being a school where kids are graduating, and there are more activities. They have a scholars breakfast that's pricey. There's a cost of living increase there. The staff holiday breakfast is more expensive because there's more people there. Some guest speakers, that is a little bit higher. That large number from this year was because they had Chris Herron speak at the high school. We did have a meeting today with the town social services director, and she's willing to next year pay for some bigger ticket speakers as well. But when I spoke to Ms. Redmond, this 7,000 amount is really so she can have guest speakers coming into her mental health class, small stipends to pay folks that are kind of giving up a couple hours of work to come in and present to her students about a variety of mental health issues. Often it's therapists or drug counselors or people that are in recovery. So that's where that money's kind of coming from. And the events for NHS students are like their spirit days, their dances, some of the things that are a little pricier to take on. Water for meetings. There's a lot of meetings going on at the high school, and a couple things she had in this last year's budget that are not in this year's budget. So long story short, it's an increase of about $2,000.
Thank you.
Okay. We were asked to look at special ed 563 and the public school tuition and contracted services. Those are combined questions from Ms. Weaver and Chair Parati. So let me get that booted up here. And just try to explain that as how it reads here. So the special ed students that are attending magnet schools, which is 26 kids, are costing us close to $500,000. So while we are now having the town pay for the regular ed tuition for magnet schools out of ECS dollars, the special ed students are costing us quite a bit as well. Our 504 students, and this is in legislation for this year, that 504 is a regular ed function, and it's always been a bone of contention for school districts about why are we paying for the 504 expenses for kids who are going to a different school for whom we already pay tuition for. So it's in legislation this coming year that this 66,000 should be the responsibility of the magnet school. I don't know if that will go through, but it is currently in legislation. If a student is attending Goodwin Tech, while we don't pay for the Goodwin Tech tuition, we have expenses related to kids that go there who have special ed requirements. They've redone their schedule, and kids are going in and out of there on partial weeks with special ed only. They're with us for special ed services. They go there for the regular ed component. It's very complex, but that's where that dollar figure comes from. And we're required by law that if a student is hospitalized for more than 10 days and needs an educational program, that we set aside dollars for tutoring. That money is pretty consistently about that amount of money every year. Special ed private tuition. These are our obligations for our students who are outplaced. 2 kids who are through open choice are currently outplaced. For that total there, we do get fully reimbursed for that. Our special ed students, we have 37 who are outplaced. That total is 5.3 million. That's 37 students. We didn't want to list them student by student for fear of any personally identifiable information. So it's not really 5.3 million divided by 37. Outplacements range anywhere from $60,000 a year on the cheaper end, upwards of $250,000 a year. We also bake into the budget the inevitability that there'll be new students that go outplaced during the course of the school year. And so we have a $500,000 set aside for that. And just to reiterate for the board, when I say outplaced, what that means is a student has such significant special ed needs that they are requiring something more than what we have here. That's the typical reason. Sometimes it is also that a parent really pushes for it and threaten legal action. And because of the cost of legal issues and the heavily weighted due process system toward families, it often is not a cost benefit or cost effective for the board to go to litigation on that. So sometimes we allow it to happen because it's more cost effective to do so and upon attorney's advice. Right now, the estimated excess cost grant calculation for next year is $1.2 million. So we took the total of these numbers, which is over here, and subtracted $1.2 million, and that's 4.9 million. Net. Fast forwarding down to the next line item of special ed contracted services.
Ms. Weaver has,
Oh.
sorry, just so we can
sure.
clarify. So open choice we get reimbursed for, is that included in the 1.2 or separate?
That's a whole separate amount
Just
of
to
money.
clarify, yep.
Yes.
Okay, and then the 5.3,
Yes, 5.3 million.
we don't get reimbursed for?
That 5.3 million, from there, we
offset it with the cost.
We have offset excess costs. Baked into that 5.3 million is a calculation about how many of those students have tuitions. I think the threshold's about 90,000, Lou?
Almost 96,000.
96,000. So anyone in that 37 grouping whose tuition is above $96,000, they're eligible, they create an eligibility for us for excess cost. So from that analysis, Lou is projecting $1.2 million next year. Now, you'll hear later in tonight's meeting that excess cost is fluctuating daily. Luckily today in a good way. So we don't know what may or may not land, but this is given current information. We anticipate $1.2 million coming back to us from excess cost in the upcoming school year. Okay.
So for the public, we know that we're getting that offset, but we're still paying.
You're paying up front.
We're paying
You're
up
paying
front.
up
We're
front.
paying up front, and that's the 4.9 is really more reflective of.
That's the net of what we
of
will have to pay as a board, but we have to expect to pay this much at the outset.
That's what we need in our operating budget.
Correct.
And
And
the reimbursement comes.
the reimbursement comes throughout the school year. I think we get 2 payments, Karen, is that what it is? So that comes at increments throughout the school year based on whether the students stay outplaced the entire school year.
And it goes into our CIP. It doesn't go into our.
Right. Currently, it goes fully into the CIP, but with the MOU that we've created with the town, we can divert some of that back to the non-lapsing account, which eventually can be used as an offset to the budget. So, but yes, currently, that money goes to the board CIP account. Again, similar to the open choice outplacements, open choice students who require a one-to-one para, we're required to use correct paras for that because they have the relationship with open choice. So we anticipate $860,000 in open choice paras. That is also fully reimbursed. Goes to the board CIP for possible transfer to non-lapsing eventually. We initially budgeted $750,000 for ESS. We're using $100,000 offset from the IDEA grant. And we're also reducing this by $50,000 because we found out it came in at a lower level when we finally got the bill. Contracted services, Lou, that 310,000 is for paras?
Yes, and we have to go to outside agencies.
Correct. So again, due to our, less than competitive para salary and well, mostly our benefits is less than competitive, we are often going to outside agencies for paras. Contracted services, Kinney, they manage our Medicaid process, so they help us get the claims in. We get about $50,000 net in Medicaid claims, which we also use as an offset here, which puts us at $1.7 million in that contracted services line.
Quick question about Medicaid reimbursement. What are we getting reimbursed for from Medicaid? And are we getting any payments from commercial insurance as well, or just from Medicaid?
Well, for commercial insurances, we do not get that. For the Medicaid, it'll be really the related services activity. It would be the psychologists, the social workers, possibly speech therapists that would be, intersect with the approved service list for Medicaid students. The way they have you process it is we don't have direct knowledge of who is a Medicaid eligible student. We have to just submit list of all the case contacts that our staff does with students that are in that area, and then the Medicaid will match it up and then send a reimbursement for services based on that.
Can I clarify that for a sec? So for privacy, I'm assuming purposes,
privacy,
correct?
yes.
So we don't collect that information. So students that take advantage of, let's say, of our health services at the high school or counseling services.
Mhm.
So we give the entire batch, if you will, and then Medicaid just picks out the ones that they have as clients. I'm not understanding that.
I can clarify that a little bit, Lou.
Okay.
Our health, you mean our school-based health center?
Yeah, or what would be a Medicaid billable service?
Right, so our school-based health center is allowed to bill private insurance. We're, as a school system, only allowed to, for the services that we directly provide, allowed to bill Medicaid, as Lou articulated, speech, psychology, some testing. So that money gets factored in, and Kinney and Associates does all the math behind the scenes. And I think this became a discussion item last year because not everybody allows Medicaid to be billed on their behalf. They have to sign a waiver. There was a movement by the legislation to potentially make it just a direct qualification, but that did not go through last year. I don't know whether that's on the docket for this year. I have not heard that it is. But so the only providers in our district that can bill private insurance are the school-based health center folks, ESS, they can as well. That's why our bill came down a little bit. And we also work with Connecticut Behavioral Health, and they come in and provide services, and we pay nothing for that. They bill those families directly through their insurance. So none of our providers can bill private insurance, but those contracted folks that come in and out of our system
Understood.
can. Okay.
Okay. No, thank you for clarifying that.
Okay. All right, and then we did have a question about staffing and enrollment, a 7-year look back. And Mr. Freese did a deep dive into this. I'll speak a little bit. The enrollment that he listed, I want to be clear, is a combination of our in-district kids as well as kids who we're fiscally responsible for. In other words, our magnet school kids as well. So this shows you the trajectory of enrollment. 7 years ago, we were at 4272, and right now we're at 4100. Or this is last year, I believe, right, Steve? Let me look at the top. I think I only went through this current school year. And then as you can see, and Steve can help me field questions here. We've gone up in the 7-year trajectory, since 1819, 2 administrative positions, flat in art, a little bit down in career and vocational ed, flat in educational technology, down a little in library media, math intervention, down from last year, but up since the start of the 7 years. Aerospace Academy is up a little bit in staffing, Biomed Academy, up a little bit, instructional coaches, up a little bit from the start of the 7 year span, STEM is flat, music is flat, wellness is up a teensy bit at 0.2. Reading and literacy coaches are down. School counselors are up 1, but that 1 is a grant funded person, the mental health guidance counselor. Middle school is flat in foreign language, flat in school psychology. Social workers, we did add them several years ago, but we've been flat ever since. Special ed is the big one. As mentioned earlier by Mr. Newton, we had 36 special ed teachers 7 years ago. Now we have 45. Our number of special ed kids continues to rise as it does at the state. We're slightly below the state average, but we still have very complex situations with require special ed services. You can see the ELL or ML, there's the nomenclature there changed over the course of those 7 years. We're up 3 teachers there because again, in the 7 years, our ML population has doubled and those are mandatory services. Speech clinicians are a little up since the start of this, but pretty flat in recent years. High school is up just a few, like a 2 I don't know what that adds up to be. Little fraction of a person and a half. And a lot of that is the ebb and flow of courses that we have to teach. Financial literacy did require us last year to add a position.
Correct.
And then we're down a little bit at both middle schools. And you can see we have fluctuated at the elementary schools like here and there. Like, back 7 years ago, we had 15 classroom teachers at Green. Next year, we're projecting, well, this year it's 14. It might go up next year if that kindergarten teacher goes through. Reynolds is fairly flat. Patterson, anywhere from 18 to 20. And Chafee, anywhere from 15 to 16 to 17. So at the end of the day, we've increased certified staff totals from 345.22 to 365.2 over the last 7 years. Most of that is special ed and ML. And we already explained the certified administrator or administrative people. And then enrollment is going down slightly. And some might say, well, if our enrollment's going down slightly, why did our teaching staff go up slightly? Well, the special ed, the ML, and even with some ebbs and flows of enrollment, it doesn't always equate to you need 1 less teacher. It did at the middle school. The middle schools, we've had a little reduction there because of the lower enrollment there. But at our other schools, specifically elementary and high school, there really hasn't been enough of a dip in enrollment to warrant any significant teacher reductions. So that's the long and short of that chart. Steve, would you add anything or elaborate on anything? And thank you for doing this.
No, yeah, I think you covered it all. I think, special education, you can see the increases there, which adversely affect also speech and language, right? Our ML population, we've spoken about how that's continuously rising. I think Dr. Brummett mentioned it earlier, not only those positions, but the legislatively mandated financial literacy teacher that we put in as well. So those really account for the majority of the changes. Otherwise, some of the fluctuations in percentages really are staff who pick up different courses in different areas. So sometimes certain electives are on hot, and then they kind of move over to something else, and those happen to be in social studies, or then they kind of move over into another department, maybe science. And so that's why you see some of the ebbs and flows in those areas. But those just naturally run with the programs of study that we offer for students and what students are selecting. Otherwise, everything is really based off our enrollment, and you can see that we do adjust accordingly, especially at the elementary and middle school level, where it's a little more clean than up at the high school level, where it's a lot based on course selections.
Okay. Go ahead. Just turn your mic on, please.
Is anybody looking at what's driving the increase in special ed as opposed to the mainstream kids
That's a great question. Yes, there was a task force that I was involved with as just a person that was consulting with them. They feel a lot of it has to do with the litigation pieces in Connecticut. The laws in Connecticut, unlike most of the nation, are very favorable to what parents are hoping, want for their child versus what is most appropriate. So there often is a time when you, rather than go to an expensive litigation situation, you just, allow the parent to have that additional service. So that does increase some of it. I also think, based on, I was special ed before I became a central office administrator. The more complex kids are coming along. Kids are being medically intervened as young children, babies, and they survive, and then they come to school and they have a tremendous amount of needs. And that might not have been true a decade ago. So we do see an increase in complexity of children due to the advances of medical science, but we also see the litigious nature of our state as a contributing factor as well.
It doesn't seem like the medical community is advancing things.
Well, that's depends on who you ask. So,
Just want to, it's clarified on the sheet. I just want to figure out if I'm reading right, like the change from the reading and literacy coaches to the interventionists, is that the, I'm
Yes,
reading
so
that
you'll,
right? Okay.
you'll see that big significant difference one
Okay.
year, right?
Yeah.
When we reclassified. So I did try to put a footnote next to the
saw it.
areas where there's a fluctuation, and then at the bottom, you'll kind of read the justification or rationale for that. But yes, that's when we reclassified and organized. We wanted to ensure that folks were being classified according to their certification
Okay.
in the appropriate area, and that it matched the budget. So that was just a budgetary shift, but not really a change in.
Okay, yeah, so
staff.
it's like 17.8 total or something on reading, so to speak, not the actual classification. 11.8 plus 6,
If you're
Yeah, so
adding
we're-
the two
because
together,
we're down,
yes.
okay, okay, so it's, just so people know like how that line item looks, but, and just curious too, I think one of the things obviously we hear, not only is increased need, but increased, we're looking at learning loss and accelerated learning recovery. And obviously the need, I think we've seen in scores and on curriculum, we talk a lot about. So is there a reason we're down with math interventionist too, if we're fluctuating? Is that based on need or based on?
So we did, this was definitely a conversation also, I think,
Yeah.
last budget cycle where a lot of it is pending title funding and which schools are identified as title funded schools. And so when we appropriate the title funding to those schools in a certain way, which is distributed by a specific ratio that the state makes us use on the percentage of staffing in those schools, we can only have so many staff in the other schools that aren't title funded, a percentage of that. So if we were to increase all in totality, we can't just like, oh, let's increase the schools that are lower if they're not a title school, because then we have to increase everywhere. It becomes a massive undertaking of financial resources.
I was blocking that from my memory. And then just lastly too, that blacked out one, the bilingual tutor, that goes into effect in this budget. Just to clarify, we're talking about here, we're required to have that and it's a mandated.
Correct.
Unfunded
So
one.
that'll be for, yes, in this budget.
coming up budget, yes.
Ms. Carr.
Well, thank you for the chart. It looks great. I know you put a lot of work into this, so thank you for doing that. I just had a few follow-up questions. So it doesn't necessarily mean if we bring a new program in that another teacher is needed, correct? Like, for example, jewelry 2, we're not going to need to bring someone else in.
That's correct.
And have we brought in programs that we then removed later on in the future because the demand hasn't been met, or the class size is too small and it doesn't make sense funding wise over the few years?
Certainly. So we look at a couple of things with that. If course selections, let's say in a couple years, jewelry 2 is no longer a desirable, there may be another offering that might replace it. So it wouldn't mean that we would reduce in a teacher from a point, 1.0 to a 0.8. It might mean that they just might be teaching different courses, but we also do look to reallocate. So we look at across the district, what are the needs of the art department? And might there be an opportunity to reallocate staffing so that we can meet maybe a higher enrolled school without having to hire new? So maybe someone has to travel that 0.2 period and come and help out in elementary school. And then they're the rest 0.8 up at the high school. And we might do that as well. So we have to take kind of a complete look at what are the district needs and then allocate the staffing accordingly. We absolutely try to reduce where we can. And then where there is a need for an increase, we come to the board and we request and plead our case as to why. Because we wouldn't be able to fill it from within with our current staffing and the current courses that we have to run.
And I think just for the jewelry too course, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a section, some other art class that's not going to be offered in place of the jewelry. So it's kind of just a swap. Yeah.
Exactly. All right. Back to our Q&A section. There was a question posed by Ms. Carr relative to the per pupil expenditures. And again, thank you to Lou for creating this chart. And it's a very complex formula, but for purposes of tonight's discussion, we're really right on par with the state average. So what this chart shows you is the per pupil for Newington, the average per pupil for state for that same year, and the deviation. So, and then the state rank refers to where does Newington rank order in their per pupil costs relative to the 169 districts in the state. So early in this chart, you can see we used to, and we had this actually going back, as Lou called it, to the dawn of time. I'm sparing you those details, but if you went back to the early days, Newington was way above the state in their per pupil expenditures. That's not the case anymore. We are, as time goes along, either slightly below, exactly even with the state, or in last year, about 2% above the state. And then you look at our ranking in terms of our ability, our current rank where we are as to how we compare to other districts, we're hovering right there, dead in the middle. If there's 100, well, not a little bit below, but there's 169 districts in the state, and these are where we line up to them. So we're just, if there's any message to be told or story to be told by these numbers, we're pretty average with what the state average is. And you've all seen the deviations. Districts that are super tiny might have a per pupil expenditure of 30,000 per child because they're providing a school system of services for less kids. Bigger districts like New Britain has a very low per pupil expenditure. I don't know, a lot goes into these numbers, and Lou, I don't know if there's anything you can shine a light on. Like if we're not, but if we were a district that was in more need, like an alliance district, does that per pupil money go into their data counting?
Yeah, the formula does have biases in it for incentives, like in the early years of the open choice program. If you had students that you were taking in on that, you would get some, bonus counts toward your enrollment and, some of the fixed entitlement money that was tied into the formula. I haven't looked in detail at it in a couple of years, and I'm not aware of any major changes, but it's probably 97, 98% tied directly to the money the district spends and the number of kids that go to school in the district. But there are a couple percentage point differences for, the participation in magnet schools, kids going to the trade schools, things like that.
Thank you.
Ms. Weaver, sorry, just to follow up, because I know we've had this discussion in the past, and I know
We have.
one of the things we were always looking at too was just cautioning the the comparative nature you can use with these, given, does this account for like the town bonding and that kind of stuff too, or CIP and that kind of stuff? Because I know some people have it in their operating budget, some don't, in terms of some of the capital projects and that
No,
kind
this
of.
would be as standardized as possible. When
Okay.
it comes to the overall state reporting, and they make their eliminations and allowances to basically, get everybody to be apples to apples or as close as
As close,
possible to
okay.
that.
I just remember a lot of proceed with caution on.
Yeah, I mean, last year we did do a deep dive into this, and Kathy Gay, who's got a real eye for school and state finance, did mention there are some interesting ways the state calculates all of it. She says it's so complex, she's not even sure she understands it. But these numbers are generated by the state. These are not numbers that LUSAT, did a calculation. That's why we don't yet have 24, 25, because that state has not made that available yet. So we just did a 7-year look back, starting with the school year 23, 24.
And just a question on follow-up. This is just an overall question, but like, as our needs change too, I'm assuming some of that's calculated into it. We're not an alliance district, but how we obviously have our DIRG. I do wonder if we're going to be in the same DIRG at some point, or what that determination happens. But also, is there like the comparative nature of where we are in terms of that accounts for in the formula, like the need that's changing? Because obviously in that time frame, we've doubled and almost doubled some of our special ed free and reduced lunch. Like,
yes,
that demographic, that rank has, it's a completely different student population.
Correct,
So.
yeah. If I had other years of this chart up, the last 20 years or so, we've really been in the same range, plus or minus 2% from the state average that was there. And our ranking, 82 to 105, one is in the 80s, one's in the hundreds, all the others are in the 90s. That was very consistent with what it's been the last 20 years overall. So there has not been a lot of movement as far as either the perception that the school district is reinvested proportionally more or proportionally less. It's really kind of staying the course of what they're putting into the district.
It's just interesting as we change as a, like, it's not the same school district at all since 2017. So to stay that rank, I think is actually us moving up.
It just means that all other districts
They're
are
also
also doing the
feeling it,
same
yeah.
thing that we have.
Most likely.
Yeah.
But it is a complicated formula that only a state statistician or a person in charge of this could explain it properly. But I think the message here is we're not spending above the state average. So if there's ever a concern, are we overspending on our educational programs in Newington? I think the fair answer to that is no.
Tony's your question?
Yes, and I'm not sure if I'm reading it right. I'm not concerned about the price per pupil cost, because to me, it's like going out to a restaurant. If it's good food, I don't care what I'm paying for. But the state ranking, are we dropping?
That's not a rank in our academic excellence. That's a rank in our per pupil expenditures. So out of 169 districts, we're ranked 92 for the year 23, 24, and how much we spent on our kids per pupil. For whatever reason, 219, 220, we were ranked 104. I'm not sure why. That was the first year of COVID. I don't know if that played into it. Oh yeah, we had that 0% increase. There you go. So no, that has nothing to do with our quality of education. That's strictly where do we fall in line out of 169 districts. We're in the 92 to 93 range for the last several years in terms of our spending, nothing to do with our quality.
We know where we do rank as far as, well, I guess you're using the word quality, but do we know where we rank in 169 towns as far as excellence?
I don't know that there is ranking in that fashion. I mean, we're all given growth targets from the state relative to our achievements, but there's not like a rank of who's the #1 school district. I mean, some may say they are #1, but that doesn't exist by the state. Sometimes like US News and World Report will put out some rankings. We've gotten a couple of bang outs from them, but and some agencies make rankings, but they're not like officially endorsed by the state. So to answer your question is no, the state doesn't issue those kind of ratings.
A lot of,
It seems like we have some great teachers and great students, but I'm just curious where we, how we look overall.
yes, if you attend curriculum meetings, or even maybe we can bring them here, like you'll see like, standardized testing across the state, and there's a state average and there's a Newington average, and typically Newington is higher than the state average in testing results like that. And then a lot of the, like Dr. Brummett mentioned, some of the, news articles or different like independent rankings will come out, but the caution there is that they're highly subjective and you really have no idea what's going behind it. Like Good Schools is notorious for not being accurate, or like, go on realtor.com and it's like, yeah, Newington's like 6, but like 6 out of 10, but like what's going into behind that? Like you can't really, so.
Yeah, but I thank you for bringing that up. It really, what we try to compare ourselves is to the state. And we are typically above the state average in our academic measures, based on standardized test scores, SAT scores, our music programs. So those are some of the things that give you an inclination as to how we quote measure up, but the state doesn't put out any rankings of that nature.
Oh, Mr. Newton.
Just a point of clarification, do we actually have 169 school districts? Because we have regional school districts which cover multiple towns such as Essex, Deep River, Chester. So we have 169 towns and cities, but do we have 169 separate systems, or is it more like 150?
No, you bring up a great point. The regional school districts are considered their own districts. So they're part of that 169, like Regional School District 10 is part of that 169. Regional School District 9 is part of that. So those regional school districts are counted as a school district, even though they, you're right, represent 3-4 towns in some instances, but they've consolidated into one district. Yep. All right. Grant expenditures. Now that was a toughie, because how to represent this fairly and so it's understandable is a challenge. And Karen did a really great job, but a lot of grants come and go. So some of the grants on here, the question was posed by Mr. Sharma, like what are our grant expenditures over the last 3 years? And, Karen did her best to compile that. And, as everyone's aware, in these past 3 to 4 years, we had COVID dollars, which are gone, but they're reflected in here. So there's really, I'm not sure what story comes out of this, other than the chef grant refers to some of our open choice dollars that we get. And we spend every nickel. So fear not, we never leave a penny on the table, because here's our grant award in 21-22, and here's what we spent. Same thing. The only deviation you'll notice is this year, the chef grant was awarded at 151,017. We've only spent 48,000 to date, but it's only February. It will be gone by June 30th. So we do spend every nickel allotted to us. We do get some open choice bonus dollars or enhancement dollars. Those are each, as these diagonals are going, that's year to year. So the first column is, what was the first column? 23, 22, 21, 22. And then all the way up to this year. Open choice acceptance, we get these little minuscule couple $1,000s here and there for that. With all our bilingual kids, the Connecticut Bilingual Grant is a generous $3,953. That's not very helpful to our growing population. Title grants, I thought this was helpful for the board to see, because these are federal grants. So if for some reason they're cut, Newington would lose a lot of money, just so people understand what that would be as an impact. So we get Title I, Title II, Title III. You can see we're getting, $380,000, $400,000, and so on and so forth. So that's a lot of money that we get through those various title grants that would be impacted should those be canceled in any way, shape, or form. Similarly, fast forwarding to Perkins. This is a grant that isn't huge, and most of it goes toward, supplies, but Mr. Sharma wanted to know how much goes towards stipends. Karen, if you could just illuminate on that a little bit, not much.
Perkins Grant pays for the grant coordinator, a stipend for that one person.
Does it pay
That's
for any program
There are
coordinators?
3 programs that we do, pay to offset a small stipend for those teachers as well.
How much is it? How much is the stipend for?
They range from $1,500 up to like $2,400. And that's it. You'll see, I don't have the total there. But roughly it's like $7,000 in total for small stipends.
So they're not paying any salaries, but some teachers get a stipend for a particular program that they oversee that is paid a stipend, but this money is not enough to pay anyone's salary. It's stipends and it's supplies.
Is that stipend, is that a mandate from the feds, from the Perkins grant? Is that something that's district driven?
Can't answer that question right now. I don't know.
Well, can you find out? Let us know.
Like usually the stipends that are like 1,500 or whatever, they're usually like student council. If you're an advisor, there's the B1, B2, like stipends too. Like if you're
Perkins has its own rule sets and they're pretty strict.
yeah.
But I know one of the stipends is for our medical science academy at the high school and the role that that particular teacher plays in getting our kids certified to do EMT or some of those other certifications that the board asked about a few meetings ago. I know that's one of the Perkins stipends. We can get a little bit more detailed list, but they're really small, like $1,500. And they're just acknowledging that some of the programming that we run through that grant requires some different oversight. So I think to answer your question, Mr. Sharman, and we'll get more information, some of it is limited by the grant because the grant we've tried over the years to pay for certain things out of that grant and the Perkins people say no. So there is a very strict rule set around Perkins. And again, it's a very small amount of money, but we can get a little more information about that. It won't really affect the budget discussion tonight, but we can certainly get you more information on that. I mean, we offset as much as we can to reduce our board ask through the Perkins grant, but it's got super strict guidelines. Okay.
Anthony has a comment.
Are you done with that part?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Get your pitchforks ready. My question is, if we're talking about grants, Dr. Hairston, that looks like a grant allocation of $161,489,000 for basically DEI, which the federal government just is striking out of the education programs. So I have some questions about that. One of them would be, could that grant be used for other things? I mean, that's 2 teachers' salaries right there. I guess I'll start there. Can that grant be used for other things besides DEI?
Yes, the grant has other potential uses, but we have gotten no guidance from the federal government in terms of what exactly they're limiting or not limiting. And as I mentioned at the last meeting, that position is also in charge of our SCL mandates, our school climate and culture mandates. And there are a lot of state laws that are still in effect about how we need to work with our students to make sure we're respectful of their cultures and backgrounds. So that position, in my opinion as a professional, is still needed. And I wouldn't say it would pay for 2 teachers, it would probably pay for a teacher and a half, based on the salary. But there is a lot of education that comes out of that position and a lot of oversight of our discipline, our SEL, climate and culture. So there's a lot that goes into it. And the whole title isn't strictly about DEI, it's the Chief of Innovation and strategy. So it's not strictly about DEI. Anyway, that's my response to that.
So what are Dr. Hairston's duties and responsibilities?
Well, those are some of the things I just stated. He oversees
What's his PhD in, may I ask that?
educational, actually, no, it's actually I don't know the exact title of his dissertation, but it was in the realm of cultural equity, diversity information. I really'd have to ask him directly, but it's along that line. He got it at Central.
Is he, are there policies that he has put out for the school? Has he written any policies?
No, the board writes policies.
So, I would like to respond to, your thing about you haven't got any guidance. This just came out February 14th, 2025. And it's by Craig Trainer, Acting Assistant Secretary for Civil Rights, United States Department of Education. And it's very specific. I was going to read the whole thing, but it's kind of boring. But I would like to point out a couple of paragraphs here. It's eliminating. It says other programs discriminate in less direct but equally insidious ways. DEI programs, for example, frequently preference certain racial groups and teach students that certain racial groups bear unique moral burdens that others do not. Such programs stigmatize students who belong to particular racial groups based on crude racial stereotypes. Consequently, they deny the students the ability to participate fully in the life of school. The department will no longer tolerate the overt or covert racial discrimination that has become widespread in this nation's educational institutions. The law is clear, treating students differently on the basis of race to achieve nebulous goals such as diversity, racial balancing, social justice, or equity is illegal under controlling Supreme Court precedent. And that precedent was from the Students for Fair Admissions versus Harvard, the 2023 Supreme Court decision. All students are entitled to an environment free from discrimination. The department is committed to ensuring those principles. It's a advisory letter. It is the law now. I have the complete letter.
Yeah, I would have to respectfully disagree.
Certainly,
We've been advised by our attorneys otherwise, that while there are executive orders coming down hourly, that right now, none of them have been made into the law of the land, so to speak. Obviously, if they are, and our State Department of Ed advises us, because many of the things that are in these guidance letters or advisories are currently state law in the state of Connecticut. So there's going to have to be some reconciliation there between what the federal whether it becomes a law or not. But I will tell you, we have sought advice from our legal counsel, and they have very clearly stated that these advisory letters or executive orders are not law yet. And if they are law, then our legal team will certainly give us that guidance. Similar to the good case in point is the whole notion of ICE agents coming to schools. We have issued guidance to all of our administrative team about how they are to comply with that in an appropriate way should someone come to the schoolhouse door. It hasn't happened, I believe, anywhere, but not here for sure. So we will adhere to anything that is deemed a law of the land, and that would be passed down both federally, but also from our local State Department of Ed. Many of the State Department of Ed mandates to us are in contrast or in conflict with some of the advisory information that you just shared. So we're in a bit of a quandary about which end is up. However, what we will do is follow the law as our legal team advises. So for now, the position that Dr. Hairston holds is not in conflict with, because a lot of what I'm reading too is about recruitment issues. And we don't, and we said this came up at a board meeting probably 6 months ago. We don't hire anyone because of the color of their skin. We hire folks who are the most qualified. And I think what you shared in the Supreme Court ruling had to do with some sort of, college admission based on race or ethnicity or what have you. We don't do that. However, we do try to create classrooms that deal with students who are very diverse. 50% of our kids in the District of Newington are not white. And the vast majority of those kids live in Newington. I know there's always that concern, they're open choice kids, but they're not. The vast majority of our diverse population has a zip code of 06111. So we have to follow what current law states, and we have to do what's right for the kids in front of us. If at some point in time, the State Department of Ed, and they usually take their lead from feds, tell us that we have to do matters differently, we certainly will. You know, we're going to definitely comply with the law.
I'd like to get back to the grant. Is that a renewable grant?
It is a grant that is through the Open Choice program, and it is important to note that open choice legislation was to diversify your school system and to give students from challenged backgrounds a better opportunity. So it's very appropriate that Dr. Hurston is paid out of that grant, because the whole premise of the open choice program that was litigated when Governor O'Neill was in office is under that auspices, is to diversify and to make sure kids are in a welcoming environment. So that position being paid out of open choice money is extremely appropriate.
Yeah, who hired, the doctor?
A committee of us that was,
Were there other applicants? Was he the only one?
I don't know, I don't recall. I think we had other applicants.
And so I still feel as a taxpayer that position, you could paint it however you want to paint it. It's a DEI position. And, I wished I knew a little bit more about, but so policies and procedures regarding any kind of equity and inclusion are written by who?
The Board of Education.
These three
Policy
lovely ladies
Subcommittee.
here.
Okay, so we have all those?
We do, we have to. That's state and federal law.
So what are we teaching in the classrooms regarding that?
Go ahead, Ms. Weaver. So we as a Board of Ed, we voted 2 years ago on our mission, values, and vision. We sat here and we voted on that. That includes equity. It's been in there. Equity's been in our policies and procedures since they were written in 1999. Well, that's like the last one we could find, 1999. So,
What are the policies? Are they? Where are they?
so all of our policies and procedures
One sec.
are on the policy manual website, which is visible to everybody and has been since the 1999 or since the dawn of computers, or when we put it on. And we've actually upped it so it's incredibly accessible. In the spirit of equity, we have it accessible online, and it's specifically labeled our policy manual. Now, there's certain regulations that go with every single one of our policies as well, because we want to give discretion to our administrators. We, as a Board of Ed, our roles and responsibilities are to be able to judge whether the administration is doing the job in which we believe. So that's where it's actually said in our bylaws, which are part of our policy manual. So that's the 9,000 series, which is the bylaws. Every single Board of Ed has one. They're pretty much similar in terms of concept. Those do not judge the curriculum in which it's taught. That is the discretion that we give as a Board of Ed to that, because we are, as I always like to use the analogy, we as a Board of Education are like a board of directors. I would like to think that Maureen is considered a CEO of this school district. This is a business, although we are not for profit. And so all of the policies and procedures we approve as a board, but how it gets implemented is the discretion that we give to the employees. And then every year we hold that accountability mechanism by giving our annual review to Dr. Brummett. So that's how a school district functions with
Is
that.
the grant federally funded?
Open Choice is a state-funded grant. And it is directly a lawsuit that was filed, Jeff versus O'Neill, started, I don't know. All I can tell you is when I was in high school, it was in effect. And that's going back a long time.
So when that position gets a raise, who pays the raise?
The grant,
And do we apply for that grant or reapply every year, or how does that work?
it is based on the money that we receive from the Open Choice grant. It's actually part of what I had just shown the
Number of
board.
students that we have.
That's the enrollment declaration.
Right.
student enrollment
So
declaration
we've
that I
talked
present
about
to the board.
that. It's right now, we're estimating about 159 students
Yeah.
at about 8,000 per student. We may go as high as 10,000 per student. We're watching that carefully. So yes, his salary is a byproduct, as are many salaries in the district, a byproduct of our participation in the open choice program. In fact, all but one position in that grant is either a classroom teacher or an interventionist or, this position was the only one that is of that nature.
Yeah, I just want to also reiterate his position. I believe we talked about this last year too, and I think we had a whole slide on his role, and I think it's changed since
That's changed,
last year. With his picture on it and everything. So we went over his position and the need for his position in the district and the great work that he has done for our district last year. So I think if we will get to a point where we're making motions to make adjustments to the budget, and you're more than welcome to make a motion to adjust the budget as you see fit, and then we can vote on it as a board.
Is it, so that's just federal tax dollars? It's not Newington taxpayers' money paying your salary?
It's a state settlement, so it's state dollars. It would be included, for example, in Governor Lamont's budget, and he's mandated to by that lawsuit. I will also say, just as a quick aside, virtually every district in the state of Connecticut has someone in that type of position. So it's not an unusual position. It's not an outlier. It's a very common position. Districts call them different titles, but they are designed to meet the ever-increasing diversity of students throughout the state. Here, we're mostly concerned about Newington, but it is a very common position for many districts, if not most.
And DEI is not just color of skin, it's.
But it does promote racism in some ways, and it does keep people employed with positions. But, okay, thank you.
Okay. And then that was really it, the grants, that chart that Karen prepared, and all board members are welcome to dive in as deeply as they want to. It's just hard to encapsulate our grants because they change year to year, and there was a huge uptick in grant money during COVID, which of course now that has all gone away. So before we head to the board taking over the budget, would you like me to review some of the potential reductions, Chairman, or would you prefer to do the other piece first?
Yeah, we can review the potential elections that we chatted about.
Yes, so the board had wondered about a number of different things throughout our numerous workshops. So with the help of the team around the table, we created a document that looks at what would be the impact of some of these cuts. And that would be up for the board to decide. But right now, as you know, when we started this process, my proposed budget was $93,063,371, or 6.86% increase. We already discussed this, but I'll reiterate it, that the ESS contract came in at a lower level than originally, that we originally were told would come in at. So that allowed us to do a total of a $50,000 reduction. And that it's broken up among different account codes. As you know, we've got account codes for everything. We also are, not recommending, but is a possibility of suggesting a reduction in reading supplies and a reduction in media and library books, a partial reduction in the Chromebook damage loss recovery by $100,000, because we, through our fact finding, found that the Chromebook insurance fund had a very high participation rate this year, so there was more money in there. We recommend or can live without $20,000 in our conference cost line. If the board chooses and we up our charge for sports, the net would be a reduction of $20,000 to the athletic budget. We had previously planned for 4% raises for a couple of different groups. We're saying that the board could choose to go with a 3% raise, which is pretty much on par with other bargaining groups. These are groups that are not in a bargaining unit, so we get direction from the ATs from the town, but also prepares that is one of our decisions to be made. That would reduce the budget by 21,000 and change the paraprofessional increase going from 4% to 3% would provide a $17,000 reduction. So if the board were to adopt these in totality, that would bring the budget down to 92,662,126 or a 6.4% increase.
Can you just clarify, on, for number 2 and number 3, I had written down that Ms. Freeman said $80,250 for books but now I'm seeing like number 2 is a lot higher.
Oh, the number 2 is reading supplies.
Okay, so that was, those, Ms. Freeman, those are,
It's separate.
yeah, they're okay getting rid of those that you gave us last time?
Miss Freeman,
Yes.
yep, she looked at these, number 3 was kind of her chunk of books.
Yeah, I think in the original memo, it was the reduction in the library supplies, library books. And then we went back in, there were questions around some of the items in reading. And so those were taken out of the budget as well.
Or they could be. That would be the
Do we
board's.
need those are the Dynamite decodables and benchmark advanced though?
What we're hoping is there may be some buy ahead opportunities, which we'll talk about in a minute, but right now that is one. We hope we can get it back through a buy ahead opportunity, but it's too soon to tell about that. So that is, are there any other questions about this chart or memo rather, relative to potential budget cuts?
Mr. Holler, I'm sorry, looking at numbers.
It's okay, we're deep into the numbers.
We're talking a lot of numbers.
Not directly related to this sheet, and I'm sorry if I missed it, but I believe there was a request to see how often the Chromebooks were being replaced in other districts in our, did we get that information?
We did go over that in a previous Q&A. We talked about, I'd have to go back to that slide, which I could do. We did, are you talking about the Chromebook insurance policy or generally how people are?
Just how often they're cycling through their Chromebooks, because I know we do K, 5, 9, and 12.
Oh, yes, many districts have a 3-year Chromebook cycle, whereas we have 4.
Great.
So that's thank you for clarifying.
Thank you for clarifying.
Okay. So this is linked into your.
I have to raise my hand.
No, you don't.
I'm
You
sorry.
don't.
I'm sorry, I just want to clarify. So we talked about the reduction of media library books, and that was the 1B, right? Is that 2B,
Yes.
whatever? But then we also talked about, was it AP Psych and financial literacy books?
Are those,
Is that on this list or? Because I'd written down 80,000, and Jessica has it too, 80,000.
8250 I had for, but I don't know if that was only encompassing the AP Psych and financial literacy and the library media books or?
So those would have been in 2 separate line
Okay.
items. Those are just library books. It would be a separate line item under textbooks. It would be specific to social studies. So that would be the program code.
Okay.
And it would have included AP Psych, financial literacy.
We were keeping the world language one or the world history one.
Modern World and US History, the online subscriptions, those definitely have
Yeah,
to
the
stay
same,
in.
yeah.
so it could be that was an oversight. That those need to be added to this cut list. AP Psych and financial literacy. I don't have my notes in front of me.
Yeah, so the total line item is 86,100. So, and we write down 80,250. So just want to make sure we get the right dollar amount for the AP Psych and the financial literacy.
Go ahead. I'm in the detail now. The financial literacy was budgeted at 6,000. Psychology text was budgeted at 22.
So we can, it's another 28,000.
Right, we'd have
Correct, if we remove those textbooks.
And that would be 103,
1030, 641, 20.
They're both out of that same line, Kristen?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so that is 28,000 that did not make it to this list. We will amend the list, but tonight you can still have access to that.
Are there any other comments or questions on these? So what we talked about, we didn't really discuss, was the athletic program costs increasing and then the 2 salary lines. Ms. Weaver.
Yeah, just a question. Would that, because again, I'm very wary of the tax transference of you're paying here, or you're paying through taxes on this one. What would that increase to? Is that like 100 to 125 per sport or?
Yes, because we're much lower than our counterparts, the thought would be an increase of 125 per sport and not give a waiver for a third sport. So paying for every sport you participate in. Sometimes it's been noted that when students are not paying for a sport, there's less engagement with that sport. And many districts don't offer that. So though, you know, the final decision is the board's, this is some of the observations that Mr. Myers was able to make given his outreach to local districts that are in our CCC, our conference.
Mr. Newton?
On that same line, say I'm a parent and I have twins and they play in 2 sports at the same time. Do I have to pay 125 for each student?
That could be done on a case-by-case basis. So I don't know the answer to that. I can find out. But I know one thing that is very certain, if a student or their family does not have the ability to pay, we work with them because we don't want someone not playing a sport because of a financial hardship.
I'm just concerned with a family that's gonna have a tax increase and then we have to tell them $375 for the 2 freshmen and their junior to play in the fall, let alone the kid wants to play baseball in the spring. They have to pay it again. There should be a cap on a family cost per year, period.
Okay. Family cap, I can.
We could always make a policy.
current
We could always make a
practice.
policy on that.
Caps?
I like that idea.
I mean, the parents.
Your mic's not on, so we can't hear you.
I'm sorry, just when I was younger, as a parent, it was hard enough to pay for cell phones. Now you're paying for the cell phones. The kids gotta have the bags to go to the programs. My kids played soccer in the leagues. I mean, it adds up.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the concern, right? Robin, Peter, pay Paul, right? Where you're paying it for it here, you're paying for your budget, and that exactly what I was similar concern. Exactly. I think that's one of the things that's difficult about this process is you're paying for it somewhere. Do we disperse the cost or not? My question is also, what is the average? Thanks to our Ts for taking a lower one, but what is the average increase for paras? It's very hard to find a comparable one given we don't give benefits. So I'm just curious, is there like an average increase on paras? Like, is there
Statewide?
Yeah, I don't know.
I will tell you, most paras in the state of Connecticut have a contract.
Right.
They're in a
So we're in a
bargaining
weird,
unit. We're
there's,
such an outlier that we are an island unto ourselves. But I would say typically in a contract, right, Steve? 3%?
yeah.
Right now, 3%, previously 2%. 3% I think is a very fair and equivalent to what bargaining units are getting within our district. So I think that's kind of where we landed as a launching pad.
Yeah, I guess my question is, we're already having trouble attracting paras. Does every dollar cents count here where we don't have that? I guess, I know we've talked about this ad nauseum and stuff, but just again, to have maybe an example or a chart that we have or what available data out there of how lonesome we are in not having a para program. Obviously, that's going to be a $2 million budget item, blah,
Yes.
blah, blah. But I think just reiterating that to know where that's costing us in the long run / not would be helpful too. If we're one of the fewer one of the,
I'm not sure what the
we are
question is
the-
though.
we know we're one of two districts that don't have.
If that,
benefits for
I don't know that we've ever found a district that doesn't have a para contract, but I'm not sure what the question is. Is the question, are we competitive on our hourly rates?
yeah, like how, so in lieu of
We are.
that, okay,
We're competitive that way.
okay.
And they do have sick days, and they get more because of the Connecticut paid sick leave. The real challenge is the benefits.
Yeah, we gave them, 2 years ago, we gave them.
We gave them some, even before it was required, they were getting
Right,
some
right, yep.
paid time off, but where we're fall short is our insurance.
Yeah, it's more of, okay, I put a percentage here to like look better hourly, but don't have the benefits. How much is that really offsetting is I guess the question, or what is the real impact in terms of us being able to hire and retain? I feel like it's at the margins.
It really we've got, as you saw tonight, we've got some amazing paras. I think a lot of it has to do with their personal circumstances. Someone who's younger may still be on their parents' insurance. Many of our paras are their spouse's insurance. Some of our paras have been able to get on Husky or other, because of their income and family situation. But there are a cadre of folks that really would prefer a job that had health benefits right in the mix. So but that's been our age-old problem for the last number of years. Especially with the statewide para shortage. All right. And then the only other thing, that is good news, but it's not official yet, is we, through the work of Representative Farrar and her team, there is a vote coming up next week to increase excess cost for this year, at a pretty large rate. I believe it's 40 million. And the anticipated, though not inked in stone or written in stone, is that Newington is likely to receive somewhere in the vicinity of 361,196. And we're getting advice from a variety of stakeholders that this is likely to go through, that this amount is pretty close, and it would be this year. So while I think it's best to wait till the vote happens on Monday and Tuesday at the state, this does have impact for next year's budget because it reduces our needs this year by $361,000. So what does that mean? Could some of the money, which is why I mentioned that earlier, could we use some of that to do some buy-aheads and further reduce our budget ask for the town? Or this could be money that goes into, that requires us to use less of our non-lapsing money this year. So I think, given the uncertainty right now, we might need to take a wait and see approach on that and see how the state votes on it, next week. But we've all seen news feeds all day long. It seems to have a lot of support for it. It doesn't solve next year's problem, but let's not go there. Let's celebrate the big win here. Mr. Freese, I asked him to be prepared to discuss open choice. If you wouldn't mind, Steve, I know the question mark for the board is, are we going to cross that 4% threshold next year, which could then give us 10,000 per student versus 8,000? Right now, we've budgeted as if it was 8,000 per student. So I'll kick it to you, Mr. Freese, for your analysis on that.
Sure. So each year we declare enough students, or this year we've declared enough students to cross that threshold. And we always add in a few extra because there are times where in the past students will select Newington. It's a highly desirable school system to want to be in. But then they also have their name in a magnet school as well. And magnet schools allow you to accept all the way up through October 1. So you could literally start here in open choice, but then leave here in September to go to a magnet school. That happened to us one year. You'll see in the grant summary that was provided earlier when we were going down the grants. One year there was a blip. Because two reasons. I always have to look at how many students that we're putting in a classroom too, and try to keep our enrollment manageable for class sizes while declaring open choice students. So trying to merge those two together and keeping all those factors in consideration. That year, we didn't have extra students enrolled. So any students that were not staying with us ended up bringing our cost down, our percentage down. But this year, we've declared about 7 students over. So we have 7 kind of seats to play with before we would be below the 4% threshold. We're hopeful. Open choice also beginning last year changed the process as well. So we do an upfront declaration of seats. And then throughout the process, they now do various rounds. And you can declare more seats as rounds go forward. So there are always opportunities to declare more if needed. Again, though, I would be very considerate of how many students we're choosing to put in the classroom and the impact that could have on our teaching staff. We want to ensure that we create healthy learning environments for all of our kids.
Ms. Weaver? So it's baked in right now for 8 per kid, 8,000 per kid. What is the change if it's 10,000 per kid?
Well,
Times 157, right? So 1,570,000.
Well,
10,000.
2,000 more.
Oh, more.
Yeah, more. I was like,
No, I just got it way more.
you almost got me really, I was about to just
In
run out the
total,
door. This
in
is just
total.
great. Yeah, I was like, my math was not doing the same thing there. Okay. I was like, if you just told me we have that, we can go.
57.
We don't need to be here. Okay. 14,000. Okay. So that's not currently baked in. That could be potentially, again, I'm putting the possible, heavy on the possible. Okay. Thank you. It was 1.5.
No, I wish I could say that, but I can't. The other strategy that we're leveraging right now is to, and Karen's office has been managing this, reviewing all open purchase orders and, making sure that if they're not going to be used for the rest of the year, we close them. That will free up some unused resources. That'll give us a better sense of our budget reconciliation. We should be able to report that to the board next Wednesday when we meet again as to where that stands. So if there's any money to be had there, we would certainly bring that forward next Wednesday. So these are really all I had to report this evening in terms of some of the, looking at the budget, deeply analyzing it, looking for areas of potential reduction and monitoring future areas of potential reduction.
Thank you. And then I think we talked about it last time, but the insurance and everything, we have no new news on that. Okay. Okay.
Sorry, one last, and nothing else, just to clarify, those special education excess cost, we're likely not to get more or less. That's a variable amount. So
For that amount we're going to get this year?
yeah, that
Yeah.
won't. That's,
I think what I put in the PowerPoint is very close to accurate. Next year is a big fat question mark. Because right now there's been no new money put into next year's budget for excess costs. So Lou has estimated as best he can. I forget the figure. Did you use 1.5 million for next year, Lou, or 1.2? 1.2?
We're trending down to 62% level for reimbursement.
Right.
Instead of 75 to 78.
So I'm in the process of preparing testimony. I'm testifying tomorrow, I believe, if I get a seat, about that. Because while I'm very appreciative of the work of Representative Farrar and her team, it doesn't do much for us for next year. And that wasn't the intention.
right.
The intention was to try to make this year better. So for that, home run. For next year, though, I still feel strongly that I have to advocate for more resources for excess costs, because as the board is clearly aware, it's a very pricey part of our budget.
Okay, so at this time, we can, so what we just went over and all the questions and everything, the book right now as it stands is the superintendent's budget. So the first thing before we can make any changes to it is to adopt it as our budget. And once we adopt it, then we can make motions to adjust as we see fit and then eventually transmit to the town. Yes, Mr.
I
Newton.
have a couple of questions. I don't want to go before a motion, but I want to have, there's some things I want to clarify.
Yeah.
Even though it's not the area where we speak, that would be after past tense. I just had a couple of questions.
So I think we can adopt it and then we can open up for discussion on how the board's feeling about various things we talked about. Sure, that would be an appropriate time. So let's adopt it as ours and then we can continue the discussion.
I move that the Newington Board of Education adopt the superintendent of schools proposed budget for 2025 to 2026 of 93,063,371 or 6.86%.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Okay, we're going to vote to adopt the budget of 6.86%. Deb, can you please call the vote?
Mary Beecher,
Yes.
Amy Carr,
Yes.
Todd Halloran,
Yes.
Anthony Bailey,
No.
Timothy Newton,
No.
Amy Parati,
Yes.
Sam Sharma,
Yes.
Jessica Weaver,
Yes.
motion passes 6-0.
Thank you. Okay, I can open it up for discussion on what's next, how we're feeling, Ms. Weaver.
So I think I just want to put the outset, one, thank you again, everybody, for your work thus far. Especially appreciate all of the visuals of the cuts. I just wanted to put out, I'm in favor of the majority of the cuts. I'm not sure about the athletic one. I'm feeling like a little bit about that, and the paraeducator one. Just because it's one of those things very relevant of mind. And again, the tax transference of you're paying through your taxes, you're paying another $25 here. And as Mr. Newton alluded to, we got a couple multi-sibling households. So maybe also just looking at kind of what that looks like. Although I know it's one of those things where we haven't gone up in a couple years. So I guess just a question if maybe there's a way we can slowly think about these things as we, up it $5 every year. I don't know. Everything goes up, right? And so we try and keep it stable as possible while everything goes up. So, but I think some of the other cuts have been great. And I just wanted to point out, if we go to that like first page in the budget book, I think it just is a clear reminder of like where those cost drivers are. But salary costs are 2.68% increase. Employee benefits are 1.22 increase. That total is 3.9%. So to me, that's quite literally all the contractual obligations are 3.9% increase on our budget, regardless of anything else that we are contractually obligated to do. And then that's scary 1.67% for special ed. If we looked at that and not doing any curriculum supplies, facilities, utilities, all of those other increases that we're seeing, that's a 5.57%. So I just kind of want to put those numbers out there just to kind of like get a sense of, or at least contextualize where those major drivers are and what those numbers look like. And then, so not saying, oh, it's all fine and dandy. But to me, the contractual obligations are 3.9. And then we're looking at obviously these other costs and where we can find a reimbursement / not reimbursements and where there's no funding. And then we have these added unfunded things. So I just kind of wanted to put that out there and then just say that open to some more cuts. And I think just kind of want to put out the outset, I don't think we have to pass the budget tonight. I think there's still going to be more questions. So to put the pressure off, we don't have to transmit the budget tonight. Put the pressure on next week. We do have to do that before March 1st. And then also, again, every year I say this, but we will pass a budget. It will probably not be the last number because it will go to the town council and the town council will then give us a number. And then we will have to readjust regardless. So I think that's just an important reminder of the landscape that we're in. And a lot of the things that we're relying on. So final question, and then I'll end my diatribe is, we don't have a sense, or will have a sense by the time we pass our budget or by the March 1st one, on any of what the ECS percentage of funding will be. We won't have a sense of the Nor'easter Academy grant. We won't have a sense of a couple other things. I think that we're up on that one of the beginning slides of the original budget presentation. So that's a difficult thing that we will have to try and think about, but we can't rely on because it's not coming in and it won't come in time for our budget. So just wanted to lay that out as we do that. But is that correct, Dr. Brown? We won't have that.
We won't. I mean, I think you meant excess costs because I
Sorry,
conflated
yes,
to
ECM,
myself,
yep.
so I don't even, but yes, we will not have those answers. There is a possibility that by the time we present to the town council in early March, that we might get some information. And in the past, that's been something we've offered up at, a town council meeting, that this is late breaking news. This could help us lower our ask. But right now, for purposes of next Wednesday's decision, the only thing that I think will be relevant is if the excess cost offset for this year passes, and whether or not the board is comfortable with our open choice declaration and looking to add that back into the budget as an offset. That's the board's purview. And anything, and whatever we do get in any sense of our reconciliation as a result of the purchase order closeouts. So those are unknowns until next Wednesday.
Yeah, and then you mentioned, but we do have to transmit it next Wednesday. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mr. Newton. Yep.
My question, I had a couple of questions. I apologize. I'm not a big electronics person, so I kind of have to write them out. When we do pre-K tuition, does that fully offset the cost of the pre-K? Or do we lose a little bit, or?
It does not fully offset all of our pre-K costs, but I believe our budgeted amount next year is 420,000 of an offset. So it doesn't cover the entire cost. But it does cover probably the entire cost of the regular ed component, which is what we've expanded the last few years.
Okay.
So I think most of our teachers are covered. Where we have some additional expenses might be transportation.
Okay. Other question was, we need to hire the bilingual teacher, and we said we were taking, I think, 2 paras for that position or something.
2.5
Removing 2
tutors.
paras, does that equal out, or do we lose on that too?
No, that equals out.
Okay, that's a swap, okay.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. 2.5 paras is not a full offset, Lou. My apologies. It's about,
One of them was a much better compensation rate.
right, actually, they were both 2.5 tutors. So it was a fairly close. I don't remember if it was exact.
Practical purposes, considered a wash.
Okay, thank you. And the question was, we were adding the school psychologist, which I agree with, and we were taking away something there. I didn't understand what we did to compensate for that.
Yes, we have currently in the budget right now is a $50,000 contracted service line that we've had to use to function as that shortfall because we don't have that other psychologist. Since that's already in the budget, we would apply that to the psychologist position next year, which would mean the board would have to put in about 40,000 more or thereabouts as an offset to fully fund that position, because psychologists are a shortage area, so they're typically hired at a higher rate.
And then I had a question. We did away with CABE as a cost saving because it was a duplication of events. But it seems like we have a lot of money in the legal fund for Goodwin and Shipman. How did that equate?
Well, we did, yes, CABE is still out of the budget, and that saved us, I think, 25,000, but we now get our policies from Shipman, so I don't recall, what is the annual fee for that, Steve or Lou, whoever knows that answer? It was a little bit of an upcharge.
Was that much? That was even less than that.
Yeah, it might have been like.
Yeah. I would have to go back and double check, but it was under $10,000, definitely.
Yeah, most of the funding for that would be for services that they support.
Right, yeah.
Outside of policy.
What did we do before we had Goodwin and Shipman? I'm just,
Shipment and Goodwin we've had for.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, do.
Go right ahead, Steve.
We've had Shipment and Goodwin for decades.
Okay.
They've always been the board's attorney.
Okay,
And so they support us with everything from legal questions that come our way and matters as far as, that come our way, as well as like negotiations and things like that. Sometimes our board policy committee, we have to reach out to them for.
We do not abuse the legal part. And I would say too, just to note for this board, there was a lot of legal fees one year on our board.
Yes.
But we, as a school district, it just happens. You are likely to get sued. So that's like,
okay.
It's just inherent nature. And given, as Dr. Bremer mentioned, the litigious nature of our state with special ed, it's probably bound to happen. So that's like, I wouldn't say it's not retainer, but it's how much you're
Yeah, we do
accounting
a
for.
retainer with them
Yeah.
and then add to it as the year requires. We don't always spend that exact amount, but special ed attorneys are involved in that bundle, as well as just labor issues, contractual questions, any of those things add up to about that personnel matters that become dicey. So, and our policies now come from Shipman and Goodwin, but that was a good move. It did save us net about $15,000 because we're not, the policies we're getting from Shipman are at a cheaper price than what the CABE policies were.
Okay, and then the last one's the big one, but I'm gonna preface it by saying I support owning our buses. I support everything that's ours. But I must get 10 or 15 emails on it a week asking what's the total cost of us running our buses with the salaries, the mechanics, the insurances. I need a figure because people are asking. That's the biggest question I get asked. Seems to be a hot topic again.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good thing just to have in general and then show the total cost of contracting out the services, right? Because, so if we just,
But I don't think people are seeing that.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
because we're saving, we're saving money by having our.
We broke it down in one of our previous budget meetings. It's $700 per student cheaper to have your own bus fleet. But we can portray that in a different way.
Millions of
But I'd
dollars.
rather have Lou do a little homework on that. Yeah, there's a lot
Some of
of
homework.
complexities there. But
I think it was
many-
$750 per kid.
$750. I will go double
That's
check
a-
my math.
It's a big one.
But that is, because a lot of our kids do ride the bus. And we talked about the buses are used for other things that benefit both board and town. But I think to make sure we're giving you a good answer, especially if it's going to go out to your constituents, we want to make sure we have an accurate number. You betcha. Okay.
Ms. Weaver? A question about the Chromebook kind of situation too. That's still, we still have enough in our capital though, as well, that we're allocating for. So that's still part of
Yes.
the PSA.
Money in our capital.
Right.
There's
But-
$750 in our capital for the Chromebook replacement cycle. Where the operating budget comes into play is that backfill issue due to damage.
Right. And that has, I just want to clarify too, but that one, sorry, I think that was like an increase of like $300,000, 285.
Right, not all of that was for the,
Right.
Lou, what was the initial ask for the Chromebook damage replacement fund? Was it initially 200,000? Or was it 250?
250.
So the board cut it, or no one cut anything yet.
Right.
What I put as a possible cut is $100,000. So that's still leaving, there's 150,000 in there for Chromebook damage replacements.
Yeah, I think, just in general, that's where, my concern obviously as it goes and more PSAs, letting the public know, like, this is a direct result of damage by the students.
It is. Some of it is. I mean, not everything is a student
Right.
responsibility, but many things are, as we analyzed our data that Craig provided us.
And we're seeing that uptick in the middle schools and.
Middle school's the worst culprit, followed by high school, then Our little elementary students are the least offenders, less offensive.
And maybe for a future board meeting or, beginning next year, like have some sort of update as far as what has been changed as far as procedures or, are we surveying students every year to see if there's damage that we can fix under warranty versus waiting until they turn it in 5th or 9th grade, kind of stuff like that. And I know Craig had mentioned other things that he was
Yes.
looking at. So maybe just an update in a future meeting so that we can kind of stay on top of that and we don't have to backfill again next year. Ms. Carr.
Going off that, there was a pilot program about keeping them in the school, correct? Do we have data on that yet, or it's still underway?
It's still underway. We just expanded it to all 4 elementary schools. It was largely at Chafee. I think the big analysis, it does seem to be a better way to go for elementary, to be honest with you. Where we have to now decide how to go about this is the estimated cost per classroom to create adequate charging stations is about $400 per classroom. And we're trying to see if we can get it cheaper than that, because if you multiply 400 times, there's, as you saw in our previous slide, between 15 and 20 classrooms at every elementary school, that does add up to about $40,000. So we want to see what the cheapest way to go is. And Craig is currently exploring some of that with our elementary pilots. So that is still a work in progress.
Mr. Sharma?
Quick question on our pre-K program. Are we part of the Care for Kids program as yet? I think that's something I asked you last time.
Yes, we have aligned ourselves with Care for Kids. So if a parent who wants to enroll in pre-K, we participate with them. So we direct them then to contact Care for Kids. So we are aligned with Care for Kids and participate with them.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, so I'm kind of in alliance or in agreement with Ms. Weaver, where there's some cuts that we've discussed that I'm very comfortable with, and there's a couple others like I just want more time on, like the athletic fees and the salary increases that were the bottom 2. So do we want to save all of our motions for next week, or do we want to do some now and do some later? Potentially. Thanks, Amanda. Mr. Sharma?
Quick question. So the paras who work for our district, right? Do we pay them like sick days, and how many sick days are we giving them right now?
So they do, they earn 1 a month. So they have approximately 10 sick days.
And do they get any paid holidays, like for Christmas or New Year's, or
We do not have paid holidays.
you do?
We do not.
You don't? Right, I think the only one I'm like concerned about is like since we do not give them, we do not give them like health benefits like other districts. So I'm just thinking like we should probably give them a 4% raise because, they go to other districts like, and they don't get any health benefits here. So that's my opinion. Thanks.
Thank you. I would add, if I could just, we do a time work bonus for them. So the more time that they're here, they get 2 opportunities to receive that bonus throughout the year, one right before the holidays, one toward the end of the year for retention purposes. So we do little incentives like that as well. That is on top of their regular salary.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you want to go ahead and make a motion.
I'm gonna make a motion. I just wanted, before we do this, for the account numbers, it's the code at the top, right?
Yeah. Dash, and then the
Yeah.
3 digit.
Karen and Lou, does that align with the question? Was the board is going to make motions? The board's going to make a motion about some of the cuts. Which codes should they use? The ones at the top of the page? They just want to make sure they're accurate. Maybe I'll put up
Yeah,
that.
you have the
So it's the 4-digit code for the program. the 3-digit code for the objects and the 2-digit code for the location. So if you're looking for a specific cut, you can identify it with those codes. 432.
Okay. Let's go with, they're up here. I'm like,
I just did that. You're not losing your
No,
mind. I just did that.
I'm like looking at it. I'm like, oh, yeah. It's totally fine. I'm like, it's fine, guys. It's not even late. Okay. All right. And anyone, feel free to share the love if you want to put in a motion as well. Okay. I'm gonna move the 2025-2026 Board of Education budget be adjusted by the subtraction of $12,500 in account 1200-599-10.
You can do those three, I think.
All in one. Oh, and 1200-599-11 for the amount of $12,500 and the amount of $25,000 in 1200-599-20, totaling $50,000 cut.
Second. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Is there any discussion on the reduction, subtraction of $50,000 for ESS contract services? That's me.
Clarifying, this is not cutting any of the service. This is, the bill came in lower.
Correct. Contract adjustment.
Just one.
Okay, we are voting to reduce the line items listed for $50,000, not cutting any services. Would you please call vote?
Mary Beatrice,
Yes.
Brittany Carr,
Yes.
Sean Halloran,
Yes.
Anthony Neely,
Yes.
Timothy Newton,
Yes.
Amy Parati,
Yes.
Sam Sharma,
Yes.
Jessica Weaver.
Yes.
Motion passed unanimously 8-0.
Thank you. Congratulations, everyone. Our first cut. That was an easy one. Mr. Holleran.
Just a question on the reduction of media for library books. The figures we have up there are not currently reflected in our budget book, correct? Or are they?
They're in the book and they are proposed to be reduced by that amount. So those are the, Ms. Freeman can address, but those are the ones that were not high priority items.
Correct. So to Mr. Holleran's question, all of those were in the original budget that was presented to the board. In going back and looking at those, none of those line items were indicated as 1A, which is priority. They were either 1B or 3.
All right, then I'll go ahead and make a motion to reduce line item 2220-64-02-04-06-10-11-20 in the amount of $52,250.
Second.
Just want to make sure that works for Lou and Karen as a motion. Yeah, okay, thanks. Is there any discussion on those line items? No, okay, we're voting to reduce media library books by $52,250. And again, those were not priority items, although we love library books.
Mhm.
We just, maybe not this year. Would you please call the vote? Roll.
Mary Beatrice.
Yes.
Brittany Carr,
Yes.
Sean Halloran,
Yes.
Anthony Neely,
Yes.
Timothy Newton,
Yes.
Amy Parati,
Yes.
Sam Sharma,
Yes.
Jessica Weaver.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously 8-0.
Thank you.
I'm gonna move the 2025-2026 Board of Education budget be adjusted by the subtraction of $120,995 in account 1026-611-30.
Second.
Is there any discussion or clarification needed for this item? No. Okay, we're voting to reduce the budget by $120,995 for reading supplies.
Mary Beatrice,
Yes.
Brittany Carr,
Yes.
John Halloran,
Yes.
Anthony Neely,
Yes.
Timothy Newton,
Yes.
Amy Parati,
Yes.
Sam Shaw,
Yes.
Jessica Weaver,
Yes.
motion passed unanimously 8-0.
Thank you.
Just volunteered me. So I'm recommending the motion to move the 2025-2026 Board of Education budget be adjusted by the subtraction of $100,000 in account number 1108 oh wow, I can't see. 1008-73030 for the partial reduction of Chromebook damage loss recovery.
Second. Thank you. A motion and a second for $100,000 for Chromebook damage. Subtraction of $100,000 for Chromebook damage loss recovery. Is there any discussion?
Mary Beatrice,
Yes.
Brittany Carr,
Yes.
John Halloran,
Yes.
Anthony Neely,
Yes.
Timothy Newton,
Yes.
Amy Parati,
Yes.
Sam Sharma,
Yes. Yes.
Jessica Weaver,
Yes.
motion passes unanimously 8-0.
I'll move the Board of Education be adjusted by the 2025-2026 Board of Education budget, be adjusted by the subtraction of $20,000 in account 2810582-30 for reduction in conference costs.
Second.
You didn't turn your mic on, so Brittany gets it. Okay, we have a motion and a second for reduction in conference costs for $20,000. Is there any discussion? Okay.
Mary Beatrice,
Yes.
Brittany Carr,
Yes.
John Halloran,
Yes.
Anthony Neely,
Yes.
Timothy Newton,
Yes.
Amy Parati,
Yes.
Sam Sharma,
Yes.
Jessica Weaver,
Yes.
passes unanimously 8-0.
Thank you. Okay.
Do we have a line for the AT salary? An account? I know that's a cross council.
There's not one specific account for that.
Right.
There, it is across various programs.
So we could do a flat budget reduction? Okay. All right, I move the 2025-2026 Board of Education budget be adjusted by the subtraction of $21,000 for the operating budget for changing AT salary increase from 4% to 3%.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to reduce AT salary increase to 3% for subtraction $21,000. Is there any discussion?
Yes.
Mr. Holler?
Can we just talk about the role the AT salaries would play across the budget? I know it's across, not a single line item, but what's the impact that would have in terms of retention for those positions, if any, or hiring?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you on that one.
Just thinking about, because it's not a single line item and it goes across the budget in several places, a blanket reduction, it's not really a reduction, but a proposed cap on 3% to 4%. What does that do to us operationally in a general sense?
Nothing.
That was easy.
Go ahead, Ms. Major.
So if I heard correctly, that is standard is 3%, correct? It still maintains competitive salary for our district and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yes, it's aligned to what all of our other bargaining units are getting this year. So I think it's a fair market value for raises right now. I don't know if Mr. Freese would add anything to that, but okay.
Any further discussion? Okay, we can vote to reduce the budget by $21,000 for that line item, or for those salaries.
Mary Beatrice,
Yes.
Brittany Carr,
Yes.
Sean Halloran,
Yes.
Anthony Mailing,
Yes.
Timothy Newton,
Yes.
Amy Parati,
Yes.
Sam Sharma,
Yes.
Jessica Weaver.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously 8-0.
Okay, so was there anything else that there was? Yes, yes. I have so many backs of papers, I don't know where I wrote that. Where did I write that down? Is it 1030?
1030-641-20.
I forget.
For 28,000.
Correct.
Miss Weaver, would you mind?
Absolutely.
Nope, sorry. This account for 28,000. Okay. I move, sorry, hold on, because I'm sorry. I move the 2025-2026 Board of Education budget be adjusted by the subtraction of $28,000 in account 1030-641-20 for the non-need or elimination of the AP Psychology and Financial Literacy textbooks.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for the reduction of $28,000 for textbooks and social studies. Is there any discussion? Okay.
Mary Beatrice,
Yes.
Brittany Carr,
Yes.
Sean Halloran,
Yes.
Anthony Mailing,
Yes.
Timothy Newton,
Yes.
Amy Parati,
Yes.
Sam Sharma,
Yes.
Jessica Weaver.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously
Yeah,
8-0.
with the dollar.
Thank you. Okay, if my math is correct, we have just reduced the budget by $292,245. Good job, everyone. And do we have any more we want to do tonight? Do we want to not work on those right currently? Are there any other motions that we want to make tonight? No? Okay. So, so next week, again, we will have to transmit the budget. And we can, I think the outstanding items are those three that were listed are potential, and then the open choice, if we want to take that gamble. And maybe Dr. Brown and team can just go back one more time and have a recommended amount if we wanted to assume additional open choice funding for having additional students. Yeah, make an educated guess on that one. So I think. Oh, sorry, Brittany, go ahead.
I just had a few more questions and thoughts. So going back to the school psychologist, the difference is 40K plus benefits, correct?
Yes.
And the other thing, I know we looked at this weeks ago on the college credit courses. I saw calculus AB, but not BC. It looks like there's a UConn equivalent, but not in general a BC. Is there a reason we do it that way? Because I know BC covers 2 more units and it usually gives more credits.
So we offer AP Calculus BC. It's just not an ECE course.
Okay.
And one more, and you guys are free of me. Under central direction, that tab, it was, hold on.
Second to last.
Thank you.
Spent a lot of time on this.
You've got a lot of time on your hands. So I looked at the book from last year and I can't recall why we were at 2,000, then we went to 39,800. Now we're going to 44,000, which is more of like a 10% jump. I don't know if we can bring that back to maybe a 5% or what that difference was years ago. Line 600 other supplies. Yeah. I feel like we asked why last year and I don't remember for the life of me. And I know this year it's a 10% jump, so maybe we can cut that to 5%, save some money there.
I don't know if we want to do a little research on that, Lou, or,
Yeah, for comparisons, I'd have to.
yeah.
I can't
So the
remember.
ask is, can we reduce that increase from 10% to 5%? Okay.
I can't even. Yeah.
Reduce
Which one?
10% to 5%.
690 other supplies.
Other supplies, 600.
Thank you, Brittany.
That's just my.
There might be one more I lied to.
Oh, go for it.
So looking at, that line item regarding athletics and the cost increase, I don't know if we want to consider, like a scaling slide where first sport is 125, second goes down to 100, third goes to 80 or 85, something like that for us to consider.
Yeah, that's,
Just looking, like she said, we have a lot.
Your
of
mic's
young-
not.
We have a lot of young families that came into town. And I'm just thinking in 3 years, you're gonna hit somebody with a 9th and 11th and a 12th grader. And that parent's gonna be looking at $750 for the fall, $750 for the winter, $750 for the spring. I mean, I just think it's unrealistic.
yeah, I think that's definitely, yeah, that I was kind of just jumping to 125 and then including that third season. Like, I kind of like the idea that we give the third season, for free essentially. It was interesting, Dr. Brummett said that if the student doesn't pay, they're less engaged. Is that like they sign up for track and they don't show up to practices because that's in the spring, or like, what was that?
Mr. Myers reported that the students, there's a higher tendency in the spring with that sport not being charged for lack of participation, not showing up for practices, not showing up for games.
Okay. Okay, which could cause an issue for the team if they're making a commitment and not showing up, but it's probably more an exception than the rule. But if it is free, maybe it's encouraging people to sign up that aren't committed. So I guess that's a fine, yeah, it's a fine line. I like the idea of the, first season 125, second season 100, because that wouldn't be such a big impact to the families. And if you have multiple students as well, as Mr. Newton said. So yeah, maybe if we can just get some more, like maybe another recommended figure for the athletic fees for next week.
Absolutely.
Is that it? Okay. You're welcome to ask more questions if you have them. Okay, so anything else for the budget today? No? Okay. All right, so I think that brings us back to public participation. Thank you everyone for the discussion and the almost $300,000 cuts today. Hopefully there's more next time. So public participation, there's no one in the room. If anyone is online, they can raise their hand to be recognized. Don't see anyone online either. So we can move to remarks by board members. Ms. Beatrice.
Two things. First, I just want to thank everybody for the incredible amount of work you've done to really pare this budget down. I know that it's difficult, and we say it every year. Every program is important. Everything we do for our kids is important, and it's hard to make those cuts, and I really, really do appreciate it. The second thing I wanted to touch base on is something that we discussed a little bit earlier with regard to questions about DEI. And I would encourage everybody to use their grown-up words. And what does DEI really mean? When we talk about this, we need to use our words diversity, we need to use our words inclusion, and we need to use our words equity. And instead of using letters put together that really don't affect us in any way, we all can use our words because words have effects and we need to make sure we're using them appropriately. I want everybody around this table to ask themselves, if you were a child and you heard some of the conversation about these very, very important topics, what is the message that you would be giving? We know that our community is diverse. We know that the data doesn't lie. We've had 1.5 years of discussions about this. We talk about it constantly, and our diversity is what makes us strong. And we need to make sure that when we have conversations around this table, we keep that in mind. When we have children who hear that what makes them special isn't important enough to be mentioned in school, it tells them that it doesn't matter. And when we talk about different parts of our curriculum, our history, those types of things, it's not okay to erase that. And that's what we're doing. So I want everybody to be very thoughtful about that. And using our words is going to help with that. The second thing we want to talk about is inclusion. We had a beautiful presentation this afternoon, recognition, about a teacher who works with a visually impaired child. That's what we're talking about. Every child, regardless of who they are and what they're going through and where they're at. We need to recognize that, and it's our moral obligation, and I would say our legal obligation, to make sure that we're meeting those needs. So that these are things that are non-negotiable. And when we use terms like DEI, it dehumanizes that, and it takes away the power that these children deserve to have. And this is our mandate as board members. This is what we do. We educate our kids no matter who they are or where they're at. That's the obligation we have legally, and it's the obligation that we have morally. So I just want to remind everybody, use your words. And there's no, certainly it's not the purview of this board to erase that and take that away from any child or their family to experience the thing that makes them special. We've talked a lot about achievement gaps and how data shows us consistently that, again, we need to close those gaps. The equity initiatives that the district has taken over a number of years has measurable results. Again, not just our legal obligation, it's our moral obligation. So please, going forward, when we have these conversations, think about what those conversations mean, not just to our families, but to our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Mr. Halloran?
Thank you, Mary, as well. I'd also just want to put out that next Tuesday in this room at 6:30, we have our curriculum meeting. And I think a lot of our discussion centers around how those efforts tie into our curriculum and our culturally relevant pedagogy. So it takes it out of theoretical and makes it a little bit more practical, a little bit more brass tacks when we start looking at the numbers. And if you are interested, please join us. This room next Tuesday, 6:30.
Thank you.
2 Tuesdays, this room, 6:30.
So for clarification, March 4th.
Yes.
March 4th, curriculum meeting. Thank you. Go ahead, Tony.
So we're adults in this room, and everybody knows that every one of us cares about every child, and particularly children that are handicapped, disabled, etc. Again, when I talked about my career, you thanked me and then you disregarded it by saying, however. As an adult, you should know when you put a however or a but after a thank you, it wipes it out. Okay, we're adults in here, okay? So the virtue signaling, I get it. It's been happening for too long. So I would just like to read another part of this directive, okay? Educational institutions have toxically indoctrinated students with the false premise that the United States is built upon, quote, systemic and structural racism and advanced discriminatory policies and practices. Proponents of these discriminatory practices have attempted to further justify them particularly during the last 4 years, and that's when I understand that Dr. Hairston was hired about 4 years ago, under the banner of diversity, equity, and inclusion, smuggling racial stereotypes and explicit race consciousness into everyday training, programming, and discipline. But under any banner, discrimination on base of color, race, color, national origin has been and will continue to be illegal. Listen, we all have different opinions, okay? I spent my lifetime defending every single human being on this planet, including putting my life on the line for them. And I would die for every single one of them, including everybody in this room, okay? But the fact of the matter is, it's gone too far where you make children when I was growing up, I didn't recognize race or color, okay? We didn't care what you looked like. We cared about how you acted. Equity is a word that is diminished equality. Equality means everybody has the same opportunity, in my opinion, okay? Equity means everybody lands on the same spot. It doesn't happen that way. That's not what getting ahead in society and everything is about. Everybody deserves. I'm looking at these programs that we have. We have incredible programs for the disadvantaged, and again, the cost is going up and up and up. I don't argue that, okay, but I get frustrated because you're pointing out the obvious, but you're trying to make it as though there's people in this room that don't agree that children deserve every consideration, and children aren't loved by everybody, and children aren't adored, and that we shouldn't do everything for everybody. And I'm kind of tired of it. Thank you. And I have a copy if anybody wants this 4-page directive from the Department of Education. Civil, again, the United States Secretary for Civil Rights. That's all of our rights.
Ms. Weaver. I think we're gonna always disagree,
Yes,
right?
yes.
We're
But being
on.
dismissed is another whole thing.
I think, we can validate those feelings. I think what's important is also that, right, there's many different intent versus impact, right? So how we're saying things are maybe not received the same way we intended them to. So I know that sounds very like flowery language, but I think it's what we teach our kids is sometimes you intend something, and I think it goes both ways, right? We intend and we have our viewpoints, and then how someone else receives that is maybe not how it is. So I just want to put that out there, a little SEL for the night. I just want to say, as a product of the Newington public school system, I fundamentally, I fully believe in equity because we do want everybody to land at a similar spot, right? Like if everyone could get 100s, that would be great, right? Like we want everyone to achieve. A rising tide lifts all boats. And I think that's the mission, is to make sure that there is we're not working from a space of scarcity. We're working from a space of abundancy. Just because this other person has extra need doesn't mean that that takes away from someone else. But that's kind of what is implied, or at least what I take from it, is that you're treating someone differently means that in equity, someone might need to step up. This person might need to step down because they're already ahead and they don't have the same viewpoints. So I think what's important when we talk about this, equity is nothing new. I'll just say as a white woman, that's the biggest class that benefited from affirmative action. It was. Women didn't go to college. Now we outpace men. White women are the biggest beneficiary of that. So I just want to think about, when we talk about these are constantly going to be our back and forth. It is very frustrating when this politicization from the national level, and it's not just those who have those views, but it's trickling down to the local level, and it's very frustrating because I think it takes away from the value of the programs we're talking about. I think it politicizes the things that we're trying to do, rather than the focus mission is getting every child to 100 on the SAT. We would love to see every single child hit those marks. That is the mission. I think that's what we all believe. But words are politicizing. And I think, honestly, everything that's going on at the national level, it's very frustrating trying to defend that. I've been doing this for 6 years, multiple administrations, multiple different parties and all those things. I've never found value in taking the political and frankly just toxic nature that is the national level down to the local, because so much of what our budget is from the local level. There is a good amount from this federal, so I always am scared about that. But the majority too is the state. And so I think like, you'll hear me say it, shocking a Democrat. It's like, I do not like these unfunded mandates from the state that we can't afford, and it's getting pushed onto the local level. It's okay. We can hear multiples of me. But I digress. I think the back and forth about this kind of takes away from the budget aspect that we really, I think, you've said. And we'll fundamentally disagree, and that's okay. I fully will say, totally pro. If you want to call it DEI, my work is ESG. I've had a million different acronyms politicized in my time. So it's nothing new to see that kind of rhetoric. But I would just caution and advise that that really does then trickle down. The people that watch this, the teachers that watch this, are very concerned about these kinds of things. So I just want to say, as my personal opinion as a board member, like, I fully support the equity and inclusion and diversity of it. And I just want to give a shout out, because it was featured on our Anna Reynolds Facebook page, that there was multiple teachers who gave a Ramadan brunch today. And I thought that was super cool. And I didn't know that we had that even. So like, just to see and learn about that was really helpful. So I am done talking, but I think next budget, and I'll just add on, sorry, I have to, policies March 3rd on the Monday. So if you want to come to that too.
Duly noted.
Yeah. But I also just want to reiterate, I thank everybody for giving their opinions, one, and two, the work that goes into this budget. Because I know at the end of the day, intent is that we all want these kids at top notch.
Thank you. Scar. I'll just say two things quickly. I think people who share opinions like Tony get upset when it comes to the budget because they see that number 161,000 or 162,000 and knowing the money can go elsewhere. And if they don't, believe in it, or they see that, okay, well, it's a newer program. We didn't have this before. Why should we have it now if that money can be used elsewhere? So I think that's where, Tony is coming from. I don't want to speak for you. And then the other comment I'll say is, again, thank you everyone for putting this together and the discussions we had today. I think it's important for all of us to see each other's views and to try to make sense of the budget and how we can move forward.
Thank you. I just want to quickly say, because I don't want to leave it unsaid, is that I think a lot of what's happening at the federal level is scaring people, and on both sides. Like, I think there's a lot going on, and a lot of the things that just keep getting spewed, all these executive orders, Dr. Brummett mentioned it, it's not law, and a lot of it is illegal. And we, as a board and as a local school district, are so far removed from everything that's happening just, across the president's desk right now, that we need to wait until things settle and until things actually become directive. And then there's also conflicting things with the state. And we work with our state representatives, and of course we abide by Connecticut state laws. A lot of this SEL, social emotional learning, is mandated and is very, very important for our students. Taking, just aside from all of the diversity, equity, inclusion rhetoric that's been going along, there's things our kids need to learn how to function as human beings in society. And that's what we've been doing for years. I remember my daughter, who's in high school now, is in kindergarten, and we're talking about SEL and talking about, you can't learn unless you're in the right state of mind. So I think we all care about the students. We all know that people in special education, students in special education, require additional services, and it's a lot of money, but it's necessary because they have special circumstances that to help them learn. Whereas, there's just so many different students. We have such diversity in our town and in this country and this world that they need to be educated, and everybody is different. I think that's back in the day, everyone had the same education, and now it's being specialized. There's federal laws that specialize education for individual students, and we have to abide by it. And we should, and we want to, and it's expensive. So I think that we all just need to understand, I think we need to not let the politicized nature of education trickle down into what we're doing on this table and the 4,000 students that we're responsible for educating with this budget. So with that said, thank you for the work. One more week, and then we will transmit it, and then we get to bring it to the town and see what they say. Oh yeah.
Motion to adjourn. Just second it.
Just second it.
Just second it.
Second.
We have a motion. Second. All in favor? Just second.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody. Well, meeting adjourned 9:37 p.m.
It's just not in Robert's rules.